Hey y'all, I'm on my daily walk after a long day working with educators, looking at some end of year data, working with some building leaders, working with some district leaders, thinking about some possible next steps as we're thinking about closing out the year and processing the next year. And I always try and think about what's a takeaway that I have at the end of the year. Thinking about, okay, what's something that maybe we can do a little bit differently next year, but building on the successes we've had this year, building on the things that have worked really well. So I always ask leaders, hey, what is something that worked well, and how can we kind of translate that to other grades that we're thinking about, and what are some challenges you have in other grades? So today's conversation was really leaning more towards co-teaching. This particular school uses the inclusion model, where there's two teachers. Again, there's typically a general ed teacher and a special ed teacher. In some of the classrooms, there's even a paraprofessional, or even one of the classrooms has a multi-language learner teacher in the room there too. So they got many adults in the room. And they were trying to figure out, hey, what's something we can do to make sure we maximize their utilization, and thinking about, okay, how do we make sure that all the teachers are being used to the best of their ability and to be most effective for students in the classroom. So I asked, okay, are there any teams of teachers that are working really well? And they said, yeah, there is actually a team. Our grade 1 team of teachers is very good. They always come to school. Actually, before school, they get together and they co-plan and they think of a plan together, and they think about, okay, what's going to be challenges? What are things I need to anticipate? What are some things we need to kind of process with today's lesson or this week's lesson? And then when the students come in, they share the students. It's not like these are my students, my caseload on my special ed caseload and your general ed caseload. They really do share the students quite literally. They kind of walk around and students wouldn't even know which students are on caseloads or not. It's just teachers have different roles in the classroom. And this particular team of teachers kind of reads each other's minds. They've been working together for a while. They're pretty good with that. But we tried to figure out, okay, how can we kind of do some things together in other classrooms to mirror what these teachers are doing. And again, in a lot of classrooms, we see this across the district, across the state, many classrooms I work with. So we kind of narrowed it down to say, hey, what's going to be the best use of multiple teachers? And one of the best uses of multiple teachers, I guess the reverse of that is the not the right use, is when I have one teacher doing all the work. One teacher up in front of the classroom, directing the class, directing the whole class conversation, asking students questions. The students are answering that one teacher, and the other teacher or the other adult in the room is kind of walking around or maybe sitting next to two students, but not really productively working with that piece, and not really doing a whole lot to integrate with the classroom. And to be honest with you, that second teacher often feels like they're not being as productive as they could be, and wants to have more of a role in that classroom. So we thought, okay, what would help both teachers to feel like they're being productive, and what would help the students so that both teachers are actually productive as we're doing that. So as we were looking through, we talked about, okay, the best use of teachers is when teachers are able to learn from the students in the classrooms, when they're able to kind of walk around the classroom and say, okay, here's what the students get, here's what the students don't get. So we talked about different ways that could work, and one of the easiest methods we can do is establishing more time for turn and talks, establishing more time for whoever the teacher is at the front of the room, if there's a front of the room at all, asking a question of students, saying, hey, I want you all to think about this, turn and talk to your partner about your answer to this, or I want you to work on this problem together and think about maybe showing your work on a whiteboard or showing your work on paper. And then if there's more than one adult in the room, both adults can circulate the room and just observe. Honestly, not even doing too much, but just observing to see what students are doing. How are students understanding this? Are students getting this? I don't have to wait for students to raise hands. I can just see what students are doing, see which students get it or not. And then maybe those two teachers can get together and actually huddle together and think about, hey, what are some things we can do for next steps? So we kind of see, okay, here's what I noticed. All the students get this part, but there seems to be some tricky parts about this. And it's much easier to have that conversation and have that next plan if there's 2 or 3 different sets of eyes looking at student work. So that's just a great way to do it. Again, just give more opportunity for students to do some work, processing together, and the teachers observe that work and then take some of those next steps. If you find yourself talking to a class for like 6 or 7 minutes and asking questions of one student and seeing that both adults are not really actively working and thinking about this, think about, could I do a turn and talk and affect even more students? The second thing we can do is just dive into small groups a little bit quicker than you might normally if you have one teacher. Thinking about small groups is, okay, each teacher can run a small group. So let's say I've got 2 teachers. I could have 2 teacher-led small groups, maybe an independent small group, and then maybe even like a partner small group. But again, what that just did is that kind of made my class size feel smaller for a few minutes. Both teachers have an opportunity to work with a much smaller teacher-student ratio. And both teachers have a way to kind of input that. And then we can cycle around and both teachers get a chance to work with other students at different levels too. So as we're thinking about co-teaching, again, it's easy for me to say it sometimes, I know that, but challenging yourself to say, okay, if I do have 2 teachers am I maximizing their use? Am I allowing the opportunity for both teachers to interact with the students in different ways and to learn from the students to process where they are? So sorry for the sun getting in your way a few different times, but that's something that I was thinking about and processing, and it was received really well. And the leaders of the school were like, hey, this is something we're really excited about doing for next year and thinking about those next steps. So hopefully that was helpful to all of you. Put that in the comments if it was. If it wasn't, let me know. I always think about those next steps myself too. All right, have a great day, everyone.